The oppressive heat of the Nigerian afternoon was a familiar blanket at St. Augustine's boarding school for girls. But today, an unfamiliar chill snaked its way through the dormitories. Stella, her chocolate-brown skin glistening faintly with perspiration, pushed open the heavy wooden door to her dormitory, the mundane creak echoing too loudly in the sudden quiet. She carried a small, worn leather-bound diary, its pages filled with the secrets only a teenage girl could possess. As she settled onto her bunk bed, the light filtering through the window-painted patterns on the rough concrete floor, momentarily distracting her from the unsettling feeling that had clung to her all day. Stella's friend, Ngozi, a girl whose loud confidence usually kept the shadows away, approached the bed, her voice barely a whisper. "Did you hear it last night?" Stella had. Everyone had. The sound of a single rhythmic koi-koi, echoing down the long, empty hallways after midnight. It was the sound of a woman walking in a single solitary high-heeled shoe, the signature of the boarding school's most feared ghost, Lady Koi-Koi. The whispers intensified the following evening. When the students gathered in the school chapel for the evening service, the mood was not one of reverence but of deep-seated fear. They sat in their uniforms, praying quietly, but their eyes darted toward the altar where candles glowed softly, casting a warm light that did little to dispel the somber mood after the haunting event. The girls were seeking sanctuary, praying for protection from the thing they knew stalked their halls. The prayer session was cut short by a sound, not the koi-koi, but a panicked shout from the back. When Stella and Ngozi rushed back to their dormitory, a devastating sight awaited them. Lying innocently on the floor, beneath a shaft of faint moonlight that highlighted its glossy material, was a single red high-heel shoe. It was a stark, brutal symbol. The legend was real, and it had entered their safe space. That night, sleep was impossible. The rhythmic tap began again, louder this time, closer. Stella pressed her head against her pillow, listening as the tapping grew agonizingly near her door. It wasn't a sound. It was a heart-stopper. It was the terrifying sound of the glossy red high heel stepping on the polished tiles right outside their door. Stella swore she could almost see a visual echo effect accompanying each step, an unsettling, silent rhythm of terror. In a fit of panic, Ngozi decided they needed proof. They crept out of the room after the sound receded, flashlights shaking in their hands. They moved to the end of the long, dim corridor, where a sense of intense cold pooled on the floor. At the very end of the hall, near the unused wing, they saw it, a faint, tall silhouette of a woman in a flowing white gown. Her presence was an icy, undeniable certainty against the shadows. The girls stumbled back to the safety of their room, but the image was seared into their minds. The next day, the school was abuzz with whispered accounts. One brave girl, attempting to debunk the myth, returned from the laundry room with a terrifying account. Stella and Ngozi found themselves looking at a partial close-up of a pale woman's face in their mind's eye, vivid red lips and eyes that seemed to glow faintly as she emerged from shadows and mist. It was an image of pure, captivating menace. The spirit seemed to be staking its claim. Later that evening, as Stella attempted to study by her desk, she glanced up and saw it clearly through the window. The unmistakable silhouette of Lady Koi-Koi, a tall woman in a flowing white gown, was standing outside, illuminated by the bright, malicious full moon. Ghostly fog swirled subtly around the frame, making the glass seem less like a barrier and more like a portal. Stella remembered the origin story. A teacher whose beauty and vanity led to a tragic accident involving her favorite shoe. In the old staff room, long converted to a forgotten storage area, the girls found a hint of her obsession. On a worn wooden window ledge, covered in a fine layer of dust, rested an old-fashioned perfume bottle. Faint mist swirled gently around the glass, giving the abandoned item a hauntingly ethereal reality. But Lady Koi-Koi was done with subtlety. Late that night, The taps began again. This time, the girls risked a look through the peephole. They watched in horror as Lady Koi Koi walked slowly down the school hallway. Her white gown flowed ethereally, and her chilling presence was emphasized by the dark, moody light. As she passed, they saw it perfectly. One single red high heel, clearly visible, tapping the floor. The encounter drove Stella into a state of panic. She raced to the seldom-used cleaning storeroom, desperately searching for anything that might ward off the spirit. She moved a stack of broken chairs and found an ancient, cracked mirror leaning against the wall. She saw her own reflection for a moment, then gasped. The mirror was reflecting the hallway behind her, and in the background, a distorted, ghostly image materialized. It was Lady Koi Koi's reflection. Pale face, red lips, white gown, and unmistakably, the reflection of only one distinct red high heel. The cracked glass gave the apparition a horrifying, shattered look. Stella didn't wait. She bolted back to the dormitory, slamming the door and locking it tight, knowing it was useless. As she backed away, she witnessed the most terrifying sight yet. Lady Koi Koi's eerie shadow stretching rapidly across the dormitory floor toward their sleeping forms. A faint red glow emanated from the shadow's foot, indicating the presence of her deadly shoe. The room plunged into a suffocating dread. The chase was on. Stella and Ngozi fled the room, plunging into the dark corridor. Behind them, they heard the rhythmic, mocking thump-tap growing closer. Looking back, they saw a trail of glowing red shoe prints leading down the hallway, the sinister prints illuminated by the erratically flickering overhead light. They were being hunted. They ran until they found a hidden utility closet and slammed the door shut. Stella, trembling, looked down at the floor just as a close-up of Lady Koi Koi's white gown brushed against the old tiles outside. From beneath the hem, a soft, eerie red glow pulsed, subtly highlighting the fabric's texture and the terrifying proximity of her single murderous red high heel. The girls were trapped. The ghost materialized through the closet door. It was the climax of their nightmare. Lady Koi Koi's ghostly translucent hand reached out, stretching towards Stella's terrified face. A small, dim candlelight that Stella had grabbed in her escape flickered wildly between them, casting dramatic dancing shadows that emphasized the raw fear in Stella's eyes and the spectral nature of the hand. Suddenly, a voice in Stella's mind urged her to look down. The spirit was not fully whole. There, right beside a single glossy red high heel resting on the school floor tiles, was a bare, ghostly foot, translucent and ethereal, confirming the legend of the lost shoe. Seeing their chance, the girls pushed past the apparition. They ran into a dark, dusty storeroom, partially illuminated by a few flickering candles. Stella, her cornrow braids bouncing, stood frozen in terror in the foreground. Behind her, the hazy form of Lady Koi Koi appeared, a terrifying looming threat in her white gown and single red heel. In her panic, Stella stumbled, dropping the only source of light. The image captured the dramatic moment of terror, focusing on the burning candle dropping, the melted wax splashing onto the floor, and the abrupt, final extinguishing of the flame, plunging them into utter darkness. They found an obscure, narrow, wooden staircase and scrambled up. A single small candle, somehow relit or conjured by Ngozi, cast long, exaggerated shadows up the steps, turning the climb into a slow, agonizing ascent of foreboding. Reaching a small landing, the 5 Nigerian schoolgirls, having picked up 3 more panicked girls along the way, huddled together on the dimly lit staircase, looking up in collective, shared fear. Ngozi's hand, gripping Stella's arm tightly, was the focus, her fingernails digging slightly into Stella's skin, their white shirts and blue skirts visible beneath the candlelight. It was a desperate bond against the terror. As they fled, they caught a glimpse of what they were running from. the chilling sight of a single red high heel resting on one of the wooden steps, partially obscured by the deep shadows. The spirit was toying with them. They raced desperately down a different, long corridor. The 5 schoolgirls were running with great urgency, their faces filled with pure panic, as the shadows stretched and distorted their frantic escape. They sought refuge in a disused ancient part of the school, hiding in the dark, dusty storeroom. Moonlight streamed in through a small, grimy window, weakly illuminating forgotten furniture and stacks of old books. As they held their breath, they noticed an old wooden door slightly ajar nearby. They watched in horror as a ghostly hand, translucent and ethereal, slowly pushed it open further. A terrifying sliver of eerie red light glowed from the crack, promising death. They fled again, running to the main exit. But the nightmare was waiting. Lady Koi Koi was slowly descending the main staircase, her ethereal form glowing. The students watched, frozen, as the single red high heel tapped mockingly against the wood. Huddled together in a dark corner, their escape blocked, they noticed something at the foot of the stairs, a crumpled sheet of paper with a childish drawing of a single red shoe. The faint light highlighted the crude, ominous image. As they huddled in their final, desperate refuge, the 5 girls were a picture of fear and desperation. Stella noticed an old, forgotten item hidden beneath a pile of blankets, a dusty, ancient school yearbook. She flipped it open. The page was brittle and yellowed, displaying a black and white photo of a stern-looking female teacher from the school's earliest days. As Stella stared, the horror climaxed. The teacher's eyes in the photo began to subtly glow with an eerie red light. A faint, ghostly mist seemed to rise from the image itself. Stella understood. Lady Koi Koi wasn't a girl. She was this stern, vengeful teacher, forever bound to the school, driven by the memory of her single lost, red shoe.